Welcome to ThugCrowd Radio. Please listen to this important disclaimer in its entirety. All participants of this ThugCrowd Radio episode are characters. None of the stories told during these episodes are based on facts, truth, or reality. All works of fiction displayed during this episode that resemble real-life situations are coincidental and are not meant to serve as guides or tutorials to commit any crimes in any country. Please consult an attorney for local laws and regulations. And as always, trust your inner criminal.
Wow. Hello. Whoa, we're here.
Hey.
We're really back.
What's up?
Whoa. Hi, everybody. What's up?
Yo. It's your favorite neighborhood thugs.
You've been stuck in the
Oh shit, thugging in your neighborhood again.
I feel like Ant-Man. I was trapped in a thing in the car. I forget Avengers, dude. I literally only saw that one movie. I'm such a bad movie. Yo, but what's up, everybody? How's everybody doing tonight?
Good.
Much better now.
Yeah, around.
Good.
There's
Yeah.
video. This is bizarre. Hi, everybody.
Oh,
Hey.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, you show choose is not broadcast, but it's here. But yo, to everybody, I'm glad everyone's here. We are. Oh shit. What just happened? Oh no.
Uh-oh.
Did we get crypto mine
Oh, there we go.
or crypto locker?
I think we're good. Okay, cool. I'm just going to throw this down. Yeah. So we had we did a lot of stuff recently. We just set up a new stream box because our old one got deleted because we didn't pay the bill, and now it looks even better. But we're still playing around with it. So thanks everybody for coming out and hanging out, dude. This is awesome. I'm so glad to be back. We've been it's been a while. We've been kind of aching for it, kind of dreading it at the same time. But I think it's because we know that we are gonna do some cool shit this time around. But yeah, thanks everybody for hanging out here. This show is sponsored by Dollar VPN Club, in case anybody was 100% sponsored entirely by Dollar VPN Club. Thanks. And yeah, has anybody do anything cool in the 2 months that we were away?
Maybe we should start with the some interesting things that sort of happened with ThugCrowd, like what we got done.
Yeah, we did definitely get a lot done. We kind of reconciled. Hello. Wow, cool.
Well,
So,
we're here.
we're back.
Yeah,
Sorry, the audio got kind of messed up here. Sorry about that, guys. Audio just cut out. Yeah, we're still getting new stream set up here. But luckily, I got
I blame Krebs.
we're all set to go. But yeah. So yeah, anybody didn't hear or see, but we we got our own infrastructure now, and so we are doing everything on Matrix. There's a challenge. If anybody is interested in it, you can totally do it and join us and chat. And yeah, I guess we've just been working on a bunch of different stuff. We got different CTFs going on, working on for the summertime. We got a press pass for DEF CON, which
Woo.
Shout out.
Oh yeah.
We're gonna be there hanging out with some press. Yeah.
I think one of the most interesting things that happened though, that there was, I'm sure a lot of people already saw this on Twitter, but there was a big thing with Krebs and Dan, and we found out that Dan wasn't actually a dog; he was a whole different beast. So
Yeah.
Get some really big revelations there.
As much as I tried, the knot just didn't fool Krebs one bit. It took him 6 hours, but he eventually figured it out.
Next time you should really get one of those Groucho Marx like guises from the party store, and I think that would do.
I love it.
Everybody will see you at DEF CON with party masks.
Stefan mustache.
I'll be
But
there.
yo, Krebs, if you're listening, what the fuck, man?
Yeah. So let's not get into that, but I guess anybody else have any other interesting things they did before we get into news? Because we got a lot of news here.
Been sweating away, like toiling away at the OSCP labs.
Oh
yeah?
Yeah.
How's that going for you?
How's that going?
It's fun. It definitely showed me some things that I need to work on. So it's good to, teach me what I need to know.
Did you take the exam as well as the labs, or just the
Nah,
labs?
I'm currently in the labs right now.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I found the labs to be really fun. And then the actual exam was like, whoa, this is totally different. Kind of harder. But yeah, have fun with it, man. It'll be good.
Sure, thank you.
Oh, and also another thing we didn't really mention, thanks everybody for running all of our curl one-liners. We kind of made a bit of a bigger splash than we thought they would. But yeah, shout out to everybody who ran those and also decoded them before running them and helped us educate people on not just running stuff in Bash.
That was actually super fun. Just thinking, like one of the techniques. I think the first one that's in the ThugCrowd returning video that Dakota did, which is awesome, by the way.
Yeah.
Was like using -D before the host name, before the a fake host name that when people sort of scan with their eyes, they see like curl host name, whatever. Using like the header flag or the data flag straight away, people were just like, "This is fine. Like that looks like the correct domain to me."
Yeah. No. Actually, it was README that had figured out a couple of different ones. I ended up just buying getdocker.shell, which is like the Docker documentation's like shell script that they use in like all of the different, like pretty much every one-liner I've seen to install Docker includes getdocker.shell in some form. Even the official Git repo for installing it. And so we just bought get-docker.shell and then just turned it into a thing. So yeah.
I mean, it's such a bad idea, right? Why are you gonna
Docker.sh, like it's been a thing since before the internet.
It's one typo away. Like
Pretty amazing.
a 0 versus a fucking O.
Oh, that
we can
my
take this.
God. Before I got glasses, I would have never known. I would have been like, yeah, I guess so. It's just, I mean, it's the same as a CLSSP though. So.
I mean, we can take it all the way back though. Like you look at .com, like
Yeah, the com files as well.
It was .com.
God. Yeah.
Yeah. How long till the exe TLD?
Oh, jeez.
Right. I love .so, but they're so expensive. I wanted to get like libc.so, but
I mean, the truth is, we just need to get involved in the DNS pyramid scheme. Which is
everybody point your DNS at 1.3.3.7 goes right to ThugCrowd DNS.
we'll have a DNS server this summer, so we'll hang out.
Sponsored by $VPN Club.
Dollar VPN Club is like funneling, as far as I understand, like hundreds of thousands of dollars to us, which is amazing. I mean, it's so generous.
It's like hundreds of thousands of people using it.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
On all of our favorite TLDs, and just go straight to ICANN and tell them, "Yo, this is us. We have a TLD. We're gonna be rolling out." So.
Yeah. It's funny when you guys were testing it though. Like you had thrown a few IOs back and forth, And like I saw it at first, and I was like, "Oh my god, wait, what the hell's going on here? Did somebody actually mess with Get Docker?" Like, and I pasted the URL. Like I was on my phone at the time, so I didn't do the whole curl command, but I pasted the URL, and it looked so realistic that it absolutely fooled me. That's that's kind of what got me interested in it too. So I figured let's take it a step further. Let's try some hacks.
Hell yeah. So yeah, POC GTFO is the story, and also look at I guess read the man pages. That's just honestly the best way to do stuff.
RTMFP.
Yeah.
Or wait, RTMF.
RTFM.
Yo, so all right, let's get into the news here. So we got a lot of news. We got some cool ways to update it as well, which is sick. So yeah, the first one that we have on here, I cannot wait to talk about. This is American towns are under cyber attack from an NSA built software. And so this was a big story. It's been an evolving story, I guess, and that now that people are trying to give attribution to the NSA directly for getting ransomware by somebody using anything related to Eternal Blue. And so this is actually a PBS NewsHour story here, but there's the New York Times article, which was on our last show notes. There's been a ton of hand waving about this that I think is honestly, I think it's kind of disappointing because you know this has been out for over 2 years now, and it's not just an NSA cyber weapon. It's just a vulnerability that happened to be disclosed after NSA cyber weapons themselves were stolen. But it's not the NSA that controls MS 17-010. And yeah, I don't know. It's just been kind of interesting to see how it plays out because people have been basically just searching for attribution the way that most people do when they get hacked. But it's a very dangerous finger to point, I guess, when you just start blaming the NSA directly for you getting ransomware after not patching after 2 years.
Yeah, when a nation states itself.
Right? It was literally funded by our taxpayer dollars. Like
at the same time, though, if you think about other scenarios where malware has been written by other countries and then used against, say, the US or Australia or whatever, like the country you're in, you're like, but is it them or is it just, you know, the people that are supposed to be like, who's using the tool? Like, if just because it's a Chinese tool or something doesn't mean China's attacking you. Like, if you're getting DDoSed from like government Chinese servers, do you think the Chinese government is DDoSing you? Like, probably not.
Yeah, no, exactly. But that's one of the hardest parts about all this stuff. But like for enterprise, anything when you're doing DFIR, all that, so many people just immediately want someone to blame, you know, instead of themselves for whatever reasons, organizational reasons, or you know, taking a step back and looking at what might be changeable in the way that they do stuff. But yeah, it's easier to say, oh, the NSA hacked us, so we can't do anything about it.
The fact that they clicked on yes, absolutely allow macros 12 times. that has nothing to do with any of this. It was the NSA.
Yeah, I think we have another story related to that coming up. There's a Mac OS one, the synthetic fix.
Oh yeah, no. I actually didn't finish putting that in the notes. We can throw that in there.
I mean, just as a side note, it's fine. But I mean, like, you know, you don't even need to click enable macros because you can do some other malicious stuff that'll do it 12 times. And you only need to make like, you know, 4 malicious actions and it'll do 12 for you.
Didn't the NSA come out publicly and actually denounce this and be like, no, it actually had nothing to do with Eternal Blue or any of that? You guys,
I think idiots. I think the new like Baltimore ransomware article was saying that it actually wasn't Eternal Blue that used against like the city of Baltimore.
Yeah,
which is interesting because like so used to seeing that
yeah.
Be interesting to see how it shakes out.
There's also
you gotta wonder how they knew though, like right? Like they're like, nope, wasn't us. We oh, wait a minute. Did we just
I guess
our head?
compartmentalization organization as well. Just not every op knows about every other op, or like the PR people don't know about ops.
Yeah.
Not sure, but it's definitely interesting though to see people coming out and saying, yeah, I've seen a lot of stuff on Twitter, people who aren't really technically savvy or not in the same circles as us, very very like confidently saying that the NSA hacking people and stuff like that.
think
Like, they are, but not like the business.
I think during the time of the Equifax hack, when everybody blamed the first, like, there was a lot of confusion because the two struts bugs that were like both basically RCE off the bat, and one had been disclosed like within a few days of the Equifax, like the major Equifax breach. And so, I mean, at the same time, like, you look at the other things that are going around right now that could easily be related, and with the RDP bug, people have got pox and that floating around everywhere. Like, surely that's weaponized in the hands of nation states and also black hats alike, right? So maybe it's not Eternal Blue. They're like, oh, it's Eternal. It's got to be Eternal Blue. It's the only thing that we know could hack us. And then like there's this bug that some 12-year-old has.
Yeah, no, it's definitely it's tough to do the attribution. It's tough to do the DFIR, and especially when a place that if you already are getting ransomware by a 2-year-old bug, you might not have the exact resources that you need to actually respond to it in the way that most people would like you to. So yeah, it's just like I guess a testament to like one, small organizations, especially governmental organizations, local governmental organizations, they're probably the least equipped for this kind of stuff. And people should be looking out for them if you do know people in those kind of organizations. So I'll take a look at your stuff. Be a little consultant, be a hero for the day, volunteer. It literally takes like 1 second to be like, yo, just update all this stuff. Like, you guys haven't patched anything.
Like, let me inspect the PCAP. Oh, okay. There's no evidence of the protocol you joined you.
Yeah.
Wait.
Yeah. So we can go on to the next topic here, which is Russia says that Tinder must share user data and private messages. Now, was it you,
Jesus,
who said that if a government is already asking you for your logs or your data, they already have it?
Yeah.
I think that was you, DNZ. Because so basically Russia is asking for Tinder to do an agreement that would basically legally force them to give them all the data and private communication to their intelligence agencies and law enforcement. And they're trying to strong arm them with fines and banning them in the country. And yeah, it's
but Telegram is fine, guys. Like, like that fails obviously, and that's from within their own country, so that's pretty funny. And now they're like, give us Tinder. Like, what are they going to get from Tinder that's more important than an encrypted messenger like Signal or Telegram?
I wonder if people were using Tinder at any point to actually do secure comms somewhere, or like comms that weren't being looked at directly. So, it's just Tinder. It's just people asking for pics or whatever.
Exfiltrating through swipes, like swipe left. Like,
could be some very specific thumb patterns
one bit one way, one bit the other way.
It's just like what's it called? Dissenting voices just over swipes. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one because I mean, different countries have tried to curb, especially like gay and stuff like that, but specifically Tinder is an interesting one to choose because I don't really know the reasoning behind it besides they would just want.
I mean, Grindr obviously does a lot of, or has done a lot of work actively to protect their users in countries like Egypt and whatnot. I think when Whitey Cracker was on, he was talking about it quite a bit with his experience of working with them. And like just basically protecting people. And I mean, Tinder is in a lot of ways very similar concept. It's just that different demographic. So yeah, it's definitely what is it about this demographic, I guess, that they're more interested in?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it seems like they just want like blackmail.zip.
Yeah.
That's the only other reason I could really see, besides if there really was some cool covert channel that people are using.
Yeah.
Anybody who makes the first C2 on Tinder gets a $1 VPN Club T-shirt. So
Well, the thing is, like, Russia also historically, like political dissidents and anyone who disagrees finds themselves in some sort of legal trouble or that kind of thing. So it's like not too far of a stretch that there might be someone that they don't like specifically
Yeah.
using Tinder.
They want compromise or whatever, right? Like they want leverage. It's interesting. Like there's a small paragraph in the article that says the nonprofit said that companies have no legal obligation to comply with the government requests, but if they don't, they risk being fined or banned inside Russia's territory. It's a pretty weird thing to add.
Very weird state of affairs there.
It looks like Telegram actually was approached by them too. DNZ, I think you might have said that. But they just didn't comply, and then of course they were banned like a year later.
It still works. So they because of the domain fronting techniques they were using, I think they had a lot of problems actually successfully blocking it.
Yeah, sure.
It works. Like if somebody in Russia could tell us right now if Telegram does in fact work for them, that'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Didn't all the domain fronting stuff hasn't all that pretty much gone away now at this point?
I believe it still works. I don't see why it would not work. Because a lot of you think about what is being delivered from those CDNs, and we're talking about like critical updates from like your Windows updates and that kind of thing. But at the same time, Russia also did their RUNET testing, where they pulled the plug, and apparently they're totally self-sufficient now. So I guess you'd have to have been involved in those tests to know the extent of that success.
If anybody does know, definitely please reach out to us.
That'd be awesome.
We got some Russian buddies listening.
Definitely do, but maybe they don't want to talk directly.
Yeah, don't do it in public chat.
If you don't want to hit us up directly, just hit us up on Tinder.
Go to an Arby's and message us from there.
Yo, so the next one here is actually interesting too, and DNT, I wanted to take on it because you were kind of dispelling some myths and rumors about U.S. Visa applications now requiring a submission of social media accounts.
Yeah, so this one is actually sort of it's been in talk for some time, and actually so there's a list of 38 countries, I believe, that this specifically doesn't apply to, which is a program called ESTA, ESTA. And basically what ESTA allows for you to do is to get a visa waiver, so you don't actually get the non-immigration visa that you would normally have to visit the US. Both of these two things, so the ESTA and the DS-160s, the visa you get from the DS-160, basically give you similar access to the United States. And the ESTA form, for as long as I can remember, has had you have to renew it every 2 years, and it allows you 90 days of travel within the US. And it's asked for your social media for a very long time, but it's always been optional. The difference with the DS-160 is now that it's no longer optional. You must give up, you're required to do it. How well that's checked, or if how well your online footprint is kept hidden, I guess it's going to depend on whether or not you are found and prosecuted, or maybe likely just denied entry to the States, unless something pretty serious is found. But yeah, it's if you are from one of the 38 countries on the list, which is pretty extensive, and I would say it covers a lot of travelers that would be headed towards DEF CON this year, and you're worried about it, the ESTA is probably what you'll use, and this won't affect you at all. You just don't fill out the box and you move on with your life. What will be scary is that this is obviously a step towards further tracking it, and if it does start applying to further types of visas, then and also if you are immigrating, if you're immigrating to the States, because of work or for whatever, then again, you are likely to have to give up all this information anyway. So a lot of different cases, but just visiting for DEF CON, you're not going there to work or anything, like you won't have any problems.
Can we talk about the most fun part, which is giving them a Tumblr URL, then having malicious JavaScript embedded on your Tumblr?
Ooh, yeah.
Hell yeah.
I wonder what they're doing to actually like check all that. Then is it like an actual person who's gonna read it and be like, "Hey, this guy doesn't like our Cheeto Puff," or what?
Well, like this guy likes this guy likes Al Jazeera or something. Watch out, he might get his news sources not from Fox. But yeah, it'll be pretty interesting to see like people who like have a lot of social media accounts, because there are people out there, who have like 5 Instagrams and stuff like that because whatever reason, and they just have to sit there filling out like add another social media Instagram. This is where I like have photos of my cats. This is where I have like pictures of what I ate today. You know what I mean? And then somebody has to sit there and click through all their cats just to see if anything looks suspect. And I guess if you are worried about it, as we've talked about on the show before, make a bunch of fake profiles and do a bunch of PII poisoning, and then you have legitimate accounts to put on your form, which I hope is not a crime. And if it is, then I don't endorse that.
Yes.
You can hear our conversation with Dash about that. And I forget what episode, but check out the ThugCrowd archives, and we'll know.
Or in some cases, their Tumblrs might be one of those that, like, as of like December, they're behind like a safe mode thing. So, oh great, TSA is going to have to sign up for Tumblr to be able to view people's.
Are there any like protections for what would like? I guess what I'm trying to say is like, let's say someone's gay and it's visible on their profile, and the guy or TSA agent or whoever it is that reviews it doesn't like gay people. Would that like disqualify them? Like, is there some kind of like protection against that?
I think what I'm thinking it's probably is they're probably working with some like a vendor, right, that has some machine learning algorithm for what's dangerous and what's not. I mean, yeah. But
I don't know that. I don't know that for sure. By the way.
Yeah. So I saw someone mention it, but yeah, it's like probably it's one of those things that will flag and for manual review or something.
Did anyone see that thread?
Is obviously going to be subject to bias, and if you, think about like if you don't like someone's memes they're posting, like literally that could be disqualified of you getting into the country.
There was a thread that I posted in one of our channels, I guess the general chat, on Twitter, maybe like sometime this week, and basically it was the timeline of a US veteran who the person basically they'd become like I can't remember if it was like far left or far right, like alt right or alt left, sort of radicalized over a period of time. And basically what they did was they looked at the history of their Facebook likes, because they're obviously displayed in the order that you like them. And you could see he went from like liking like Fox News and then, so on and so forth, until he got all the way down to like his radicalized ideas. And then the next thing you know, he's like threatening people on social media. So he went from like a real kind of centrist guy, like follows his journey. So I guess there's a lot of ways you could implement automation around that kind of thing.
Yeah, I can't imagine there's like NDA or like processes around it that prevent you from sharing your experience. So I'd be really interested to hear from people that have been through it, just like actually how invasive it was and whatnot. That'd be totally interesting to hear about.
Yeah, for sure.
I would probably just be looking for people that are like 1 degree away from the people that I want. It's just easier to have a list of people you're looking for.
That's basically how the the financial sanctions lists and those kind of things work as well, where it's like, you know, I don't know, during the Crimea thing, I remember it was like the ex-prime minister or whatever or the ex-president or whatever their leader was. Sorry, my ignorance. But like his like brother-in-law or something was on the financial sanctions list from a bunch of countries. Like, yeah, this guy can't transfer money at this time because he's 1 degree away from somebody who's in the middle of a conflict.
Yep.
And yeah, it's literally a list, and you can subscribe to them if you have valid reasons to, and you'll see what kind of people aren't allowed to transfer money. And I guess those people are persons of interest that are, for various reasons, that I guess would also be persons of interest to do with travel.
Guess there's a common theme name-wise, but that could just be a generalization on my part.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, it's scary stuff. The facial recognition, I don't know if that was... I didn't look too far
Sorry, I
ahead in
didn't
our
realize
list. What's that?
Yo, I didn't realize I was muted. Yo, the next one, we should get on to the next topic real quick because it's 10 o'clock already. Yo, this one here is pretty wild though. Google is going to restrict modern ad blocking Chrome extensions to just enterprise users. This one I was reading a little bit more into. And I mean, the real solution for this is just to use Firefox. But This is pretty wild though, that there's literally, first off, I didn't know that there was Chrome enterprise users. And also that it just sucks that they're just literally going to just block the ability to use any sort of modern like request blocking, blacklisting, things like that to people who are enterprise. It's a weird thing because it's like if you can make your own add-ons for Chrome, how are you going to restrict that?
I mean, I wrote a Chrome add-on a long time ago, and it was called I think it's on my GitHub maybe. It was called This Is Shit, and it was basically a downvote system with like a little poop emoji in your bar, and you just keep mashing the button, and the more times you mash it, the number, like the little number rises, and then it sends it back to the server. And however many other people who also think this website is shit, it would come up there as well. And it was, well, like the result of it was we found that intercepting people's requests was ridiculously easy. And we were leaking data by accident, and we took it off like the Chrome extension down after a couple of hours because we were like, whoa, we accidentally did a bad thing. I hope nobody installed this.
Yeah.
It was interesting.
The other part, people are talking about like Pi-hole in the chat, which is like really good. However, there's a lot of services that have been getting around Pi-hole by just serving everything through the same subdomain. And it's becoming more and more common now for those kind of things to happen. And there's just recently, just in the past like couple of months, there's been a very large wave of like anti-ad block techniques and things coming out from these large providers, Twitch and YouTube, and all this video content. And it should be noted that, of course, Google's a fucking ad company, so like could have seen this coming a mile away. But
another thing with the Pi-hole thing as well is it's a problem that's been tackled separately when we look at proxying through when like corporate firewalls and stuff like that. So when you're forced through a transparent proxy, or you're forced to install a CA or something, and it blocks a bunch of stuff you need, like the Pi-hole is going to run into those problems at some point, like if not already, because if it's not solved with millions of dollars of R&D, it's not going to be solved by open source either, just yet. Maybe eventually, but it's a complex problem, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it's not only a complex problem, but it's a problem that companies are incentivized to solve on their end, right? Anytime you have problems that companies want to solve, like for X amount of money, that costs them X amount of money, like they are heavily incentivized to do so, versus, just because you don't like ads on the other end.
So what was it that Microsoft did back in the day that got the government to intervene with their Internet Explorer quote-unquote monopoly And like, why isn't Google getting that kind of attention?
That was to do with shipping it with Windows.
Yeah, that was a bit different.
Yeah,
but yeah,
but you make the choice to set your browser. You know, I mean, a lot of people don't because they're not aware. But yeah, like I guess on iOS people just use Safari, or on macOS they use Safari because it's there, and on Windows people use Edge, and on Android people use some form of WebKit. Some disgusting thing that comes with Android that's not really a real browser.
Yeah, it's gross. The most interesting part of this to me, though, is that it's a Chromium actually like thing, right? Feature, quote unquote. So, or is it just Chrome itself?
I don't think it's Chromium. Chromium is open. It can be compiled without Google's features, but
yeah.
So if you could have an optional compile flag to allow that, within the manifest v3, I suppose. Whether the developers choose to do that or not, I mean, that's up to them. And I think a lot of those neckbeard developers are going to be having these discussions in a lot more depth as well.
Yeah, it's just yeah, it's just it's an interesting issue to work around.
There was talk earlier, like, is this still covering Google wanting to implement their own ad blocking system within Chrome? Is that still a thing?
I don't know.
It's interesting. I haven't heard much about that.
Well, I'm like, I was trying to figure out a way to get around this stupid paywall on Wall Street Journal. If anybody knows how, let me know. I did it before.
Yeah.
I don't have that article either.
I hate when this happens. I literally I viewed it through a referrer that let me do it, and I forget exactly how I meant to include it in the notes.
I think
There's a
mobile
few
referrers do it.
Yeah, and there was a couple of them to do it, but yeah, sorry about that, guys.
Terrible part is I have a paid account. I just don't have the thing to log into it right now.
Maybe try bugmenot.com. That's a throwback to a decade ago.
Groupons, like, let's go.
Yeah, no, we were trying to figure out every referrer link that we can use to get around paywalls like this. If anybody has any, add them to our collection.
You have a collection?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So wait, what?
No, let's go. Let's do it.
Oh, let's get to the next thing here. This is the vague bit of this article was that Amazon is trying to get apartments, like new apartment buildings, to integrate Alexa. And there's already people have been talking about Alexa devices being integrated into their hotels, but just the being able to sell, I guess, the Alexa as like a sort of like an enterprise solution, I would say, for an apartment building, for things like managing like tenant doorbells and things like that. Like those are going to be, or are currently being marketed as solutions for like apartment buildings, and it's creepy as fuck because obviously Alexa is not the most secure and well-loved technology. I guess by movie regulars, most people that are more security and privacy oriented know that Alexa's always listening, and it's just sending data about everything you do. And if it's forced upon you by where you live, that's pretty fucked.
If you do have an Alexa though, and you are interested, there is a link that you can check. It's like just like /privacy or something. It's like something really simple. You'll be able to Google it in seconds, but it'll actually allow you to download snippets or like clips that Alexa has heard, and like people have gone through it and just found like whole conversations they've had. They've had like people over that's talking about random stuff or whatever.
Wait, what? They made it open
for your own account, yeah.
I'm sorry, what?
So for your own account, you can log into your account and go to the privacy section, and you can listen to what they've got.
That's super creepy. There was I was trying to reimage an Amazon Fire or something like that the other day, and I thought I was just hearing things at first, but I thought I heard my own voice being echoed back to me, and no, it kept happening. Like snippets of my voice were being recorded and then played back to me. And this wasn't even an Alexa. This was one of those Kindle Fire things. Pretty insane.
I wonder if you're ever going to be able to get Alexa as an AWS service.
You
God.
can, of course. I think that there's integrations for that already. You can build apps with Alexa on AWS.
Yeah, it's called Lexia.
There was actually a Kickstarter project. I don't know how far it went, but if you think of Get Smart, the Cone of Silence, where basically it's a 3D printed coney thing that goes over the top of your thing, and you program that to have a different keyword, and then it echoes, like it has a microphone inside that will then trigger the Alexa. So it's like it's a layer above your like home hub thingy.
An Alexa condom.
Basically, yeah. But I don't know how well that works either, because I mean, like you could accidentally trigger its keyword and now it's recording and playing it through for you.
There was some stuff around ultrasound and like totally maxing out the microphone's capabilities. I think MG was looking into that a little bit, but
Pushing the coil all the way to the end, like all the time.
yeah, it's like it's not within range of human or I believe even animal hearing, but it'll clip the microphone because the microphone's able to hear it, and it seems like an effective countermeasure. Personally, I've had issues with tinnitus and stuff over the past year, so I'm like a little apprehensive about blasting frequencies at my ears.
Yeah. But it'll keep the mosquitoes away and maybe cockroaches.
Right, it'll boil water at certain proximities.
Yeah. Also, organ energy. So.
Oh God. I quit.
Yeah, but I mean, I circling back to the main point though, that being sold is the same thing that Amazon does with everything else, which is we have integrated with everything. Therefore, it's for you. And I don't know. I just feel like building managers. It seems like an interesting choice, cheap choice for them.
Yeah.
It's just it's something that's eventually going to get rolled out all over the place because it's cheap and it's easy and everybody knows it and is familiar with the tech. But all it does is monopolize your literal private space. But
somebody that's kind of become a speaker that's pretty renowned for this, just kind of out of the blue, was Leslie Carhart, Hacks for Pancakes on Twitter, against the Bluetooth, the locks.
Yeah,
I have a feeling this is kind of right up her alley. So
yeah,
that might be interesting to talk to her about it some later time.
It's very it's like HAL 9000 is a very well known AI amongst nerds in general and even non-nerds, so when you're talking to HAL, that's where it's heading. But I think with smart devices in the home, like I would like, if I was like looking to move into a new house or a new apartment, I would want the smart light type deal, and maybe climate control and things like that, but done in the right way. And I mean, the people who build houses generally, and architects and things like that, they don't always know like the security side of things. But some of the cool alternatives are like the motion sensors that will trigger like LEDs to turn on when you enter the room and stuff like that. So there are smart alternatives that could also maybe give you the same experience without having to go down the full path of having the microphone listen to you.
Yeah. Out of all the Alexa integrations, the one I want the least is my landlord. Like, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, or like the landlord having the password to log in to the Amazon account it's tied to, and then downloading the snippets, being like, "Oh, what am I?
Absolutely, yeah. that's the other thing too, is that it gives people, which everybody who's lived in a weird, scummy area has had to deal with people who are maybe less than scrupulous landlords, and being able to have access to like audio recordings and purposely and stuff is pretty fucking weird. It makes people a lot creepier very quickly. But the next story here is amazing, and it's just something that, having dealt with this today, on a smaller scale, I can really relate with DoD right now. So let me tell you a story. Today, Hermit got me a matte screen protector for my computer, and I was so excited because my screen sucks, and I just wanted to get a screen protector for my laptop. And I put it on, and I was like, "Oh, it's gonna be matte. It's gonna be, it'll look fine." Finally able to like actually look at my screen. I put it on, and it's just as reflective as the screen that was underneath it, and it just kept putting it off. And I'm like, "Oh, cool! It just doesn't work." And then the story here with the DoD, they bought a bunch of phony military gear, including anti-night vision reflective clothing, but just didn't work, and it was from China. Probably in the same way. I just feel like they just get fished. They've got like literally like Alibaba right now. Like, it's insane. So yeah, I guess a bunch of like tactical gear that was manufactured and sold from China, that had all sorts of anti-surveillance technology built into it, just didn't work, and they spent a bunch of money on it, and it just
And you know what's really funny about the IR stuff, like the night vision stuff, is that we were talking about ThugCrowd merch, and looking into different countermeasures for like surveillance and stuff. And some of the things that we were seeing, obviously not like military level spec, just sort of like consumer level spec. It didn't look very like difficult, like not like it looked difficult, obviously, but to an extent, it wasn't super complex. So I feel like that this stuff isn't even trying. Like maybe this will defeat those like IR, like power over Ethernet cameras you'll see on the side of someone's house or whatever. Like the cheap $5. Like who broke it? Was it Pike this week? Broke those like really $5 cameras.
Oh yeah, the little camera. Pike, you're there? Are you there, Pike?
No, I've actually have experience with this material. I mean, all it really is just pretty much something that kind of acts as, kind of like how it's non-mirror, where it doesn't reflect light energy that much. And really all it does is just pretty much actually subdue IR light that actually bounces off your clothing, and it kind of actually makes it so it doesn't reflect back to the night vision. Because night vision tech, all it really is kind of like a preamplifier put with light. And what it does to actually use it, you can actually use like IR lights that aren't really visible with the naked eye, but what it'll do is it'll actually make the the night vision actually have light bounce back to it, so you can be able to see so you can actually have flashlights. And this material, all it does is just keep it from reflecting back. But honestly, just using it, even with the subdued stuff, doesn't work. It's a little bit of freaking snake oil, honestly. And for the most part, this sounds like pretty much one of the vendors that actually supplies clothing for the United States military and stuff like that probably actually got some material from China just to save on money, and they actually just used it for their stuff, and that's how it got in there.
Yeah. I mean, definitely, I can see where this would happen. It's just interesting to see that even government contractors and people who are supplying to the DoD are still not immune to getting rickrolled by Chinese merchants on
catfished.
I'm not saying the Chinese merchants are bad, but there are definitely a lot of sites that just do not sell what they're saying, and you're just like, I'll just try it. I guess it's $1, but it's just has like lead in it or.
You're a little nicer than I am. I actually just think the vendor knew exactly what the hell they were buying, but they were just trying to save money.
That's the other thing too, is that when you are outsourcing stuff like that to countries that you might be in tensions with, I feel like it's not necessarily the best to ask them for, hey, we're trying to hide from you when we invade eventually. Can you please tell us close to do so?
But I think considering it was a US based company, Brooklyn based wholesaler that got the tender, you would assume that in order to, I mean, I don't really know how it works in the States. It's just sort of like when there's a government contract here and it goes up for tender and a bunch of companies are eligible, you have to be eligible. Like there's requirements for you to, be in the running to get the contract. I feel like because like they should have been smarter, like or being certified that these people know how to actually make this stuff that they're going to provide us, rather than just be the because it's generally the lowest bidder, right? The lowest bidder that has quality, like some sort of level of skill. So
the lowest bidder that knows someone in charge of handing out contracts. Yeah.
Sorry.
That's usually how it goes. It's mostly middle of the road stuff. It's not always the lowest bidder, but knowing someone usually does help a lot.
Also, there's a thing where some government contracts, it can't go to the same company for more than X amount of time. So people just create shell companies to then be able to get the contract afterwards and that kind of stuff. There's a whole bunch of terrible shit that goes into that I've looked into. But yeah, anyway, continue.
The spirit of those rules are pretty much actually to equally distribute the work for the United States people, because they're using tax dollars to pay for this. So the incentive is to pretty much help U.S. business to actually flourish.
Oh yeah, for sure. But shell companies absolutely ruin it.
No, there's ways around this.
Yeah, and later when we get onto our when it's chatting about stuff, I think we should discuss a little bit of shell companies and stuff around the Huawei Android and ARM business. Be quite interesting.
Yeah.
Let's leave that for after.
Everybody who's listening too, once we're done with the news here, we are going to take a small break, and then we'll come back with just more chatting and banter about stuff that we didn't get to cover that we wanted to talk about. So yeah, we'll be here hanging out. But yeah, let's try to get through the rest of the news stories. So yeah, this one here, Nginx server bugs that could lead to RCE. It's actually a really good write-up, pretty cohesive write-up about this. Just saying that we don't really know what the full details are. But there is some remote code execution bugs in Nginx, which is pretty dope. Haven't really seen those kind of things in a while. I mean, RCE on like servers like this isn't as common anymore. So definitely interesting to see what happens. This also, this entire thing is what led to Dan's curl request that caused a lot of trouble. But what was interesting though is a lot of people said, you gave me, you scared me, and I had to do something about it. And people who are legitimate, CISOs, people who are in charge of security stuff, we're seeing the logs. They're sharing in Slack, they're sharing in different, secure comms and stuff, and trying to hash it out and determine. But whether or not it was real, people definitely acted and patched, and they updated, like, oh crap, we haven't updated Nginx in like 4 years. We gotta do something about this.
Yeah.
They kind of light the fire on your ass when you say, oh, here, we're on Twitter. Yo, you just read about this today. Maybe you're even finding out about the vulnerability itself, through this meme tweet. But regardless, it definitely lit a fire on a lot of people's asses. And it definitely, when this thing does come out, hopefully the actual POC comes out after the patch is released.
Yeah. It's surprising the amount of people that I got I didn't get anybody that was like super angry or anything like that. They were more just like either cool obfuscation, but a lot of them were like, thanks for raising awareness of this potential Nginx issue. A lot of them just had no idea about it. And while I don't know, it looks like it was patched in the 0.32 release, but
okay.
A lot of them just didn't know about it. And so in my view, it kind of raised awareness of two different things. It definitely put some eyeballs on the Nginx issues that are upcoming. But it also, it's something that we've been doing as ThugCrowd for a little bit now, just kind of goofing around with, is playing around with different obfuscation techniques and just kind of playing around, nothing malicious. And it definitely wasn't meant to go as widely as it did, but there's no regrets on it. Like I didn't.
No regrets.
No regrets. Yeah. I mean, it simply like that's just the index HTML. And, if you're going to copy and paste it with it piping to SH, that's something that you kind of consciously did. And I can't stop you from doing that.
The same day that we were actually talking about this, I was setting up a VM for it was a throwaway VM just for testing something, and I wanted to install NVM, which is a Node version manager for managing different versions of Node.js, and it's actually used in prod. And as far as I could see, the only way documented officially to install it is to pipe it to the shell.
Oh really? That's funny.
So yeah, so like I'm sitting there like laughing about like people piping stuff to a shell. I'm like, how do I not pipe this to a shell? So I look at the shell script and start reading it, and any one of those lines that I scanned over, because I didn't fine tooth comb and I didn't do a proper audit, but could have contained something easily as obfuscated. It's when we get into layers and stuff. It's like, how much do you trust where this is coming from? And meanwhile, I'm thinking in my head, like, this is a throwaway VM. I have something else to do. This is totally not my goal. And I just just bit my tongue and clicked it, and then pasted it directly into my terminal as root.
Yeah.
And I felt bad because that's exactly what I'm telling people not to do.
Yeah, I think Brews installed pretty much the same way too, if I'm not mistaken. Like they definitely have a one-liner.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
I think in the case if you are working on a project, like even if it's a small project, that may become something big or you never intended to get anywhere, having some sort of alternative way to install things is probably something to take into account, and maybe taking that little bit of extra step. So maybe using something like I don't know, Flatpak, or I guess Flatpak is one way to do it, or like I guess Snap is another way. I'm not a huge fan of Snap, but there are ways,
or literally anything else.
Well, see, the problem becomes
ways that you can sort of have these like management things that remove the clickbait. No, sorry, not clickbaity. The baiting aspect away from it, where you're using a package manager, things can be pushed into repositories later, like not today where you're busy like trying to figure out how to make the actual thing work, but like having some idea in your head that like I'm not gonna start by telling people to pipe it to the shell, and then 4 years later my project blows up and I'm still telling people to pipe it to the shell.
Right.
Also, the biggest thing here is that if you're a researcher and you have a vulnerability coming out with a fancy name and a logo, hit us up and we'll build some awareness. Sell our services.
We'll inject your phones into the mainstream.
Just a big shout out to Alyssa, though, the ZDI researcher that actually found the real talented stuff through Nginx. I think that's amazing work that everybody on ZDI group does, and Alyssa is not an exception to that rule. So, and shout outs to her for also being really cool about not getting offended that I quote tweeted her thing and kind of used it as a little bit of a springboard. She seemed to be pretty happy about the raising awareness thing. So massive shout out to her. Much love.
The last part of the article here says there has been a lot of talk on Twitter about the real world implications of the bug, with even Assange admitting that the hype is disproportional, which
yeah,
great part to that. But I mean, it got people talking, it got people looking into it, it got people thinking about their systems and saying, holy shit, what if somebody was able to get RCE on my system right now? And they've been waiting for it.
There are a lot of people though who have never moved from Apache to Nginx, and I'm not really sure, because like I moved some time ago now, like many years, and I'm sort of like out of the loop of like, are we seeing these type of bugs in Apache still? Because I mean, prior to this one, there was a directory traversal by removing the slash in the initial slash after the host name. In Nginx, it was patched a while ago, and I mean, these are kind of bugs that you'd think would be found by now, and I mean, in Apache, it's obviously battle hardened. It's it's battle tested, but unfortunately, it's got the downsides of being Apache. So
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, like, is Nginx, do they need to pick the game up on the security? Does it need more auditing? Or I don't know.
I definitely think that web servers don't get too much auditing, so they could never get too much. So I would definitely implore people who are listening to go and hit those things, because you find a lot of stuff, especially in modules. That's where a lot of stuff you see is just in random modules that is loaded that people don't really care about that much, but they're just there, come by default. And so that's where a lot of stuff that I've seen, at least for Apache, the bones come from just random like mod, like whatever. And yeah, so go hit those, buzz them out.
Just one other thing to add, if you're like super into that kind of stuff, there's absolutely companies that will hire you to just go through repos on GitHub and whatnot to find cool stuff like this. ZDI being one of them. There's plenty of them though. So check it out.
Yeah, definitely reading gits that git diffs that are very like nondescript.
Oh, I love those.
Or like they just contain a test case, and you're like, oh, that's good.
You know, it's amazing. A lot of them are actually entitled "fix licensing" or remove credentials. So like, you don't even have to search that deeply on some of these projects, because they're not security mindset full. They're not paranoid, so they're not thinking that, oh, some bad guy could be actually looking through this.
I think a lot of
and having gone and done a few talks recently at like DevOps cons about CVEs and stuff like that, a lot of devs and DevOps people don't really know that like issues that live on GitHub are like a thing that people look at, and they were widely pretty surprised by this when I talked about it. And so like it's, people that they sit there and people know they sit there, nobody knows that that's a thing that people look for.
Yeah, I think if you look at projects like OpenSSL, for example, like if there's a bug in OpenSSL, you're not going to see that Git pushed, that commit or that branch pushed anywhere until after the disclosure as well, which is so that, teams that are aware that people are watching their repos aren't just pushing everything up, whereas teams that are like, usually pretty small, pretty like agile, move fast kind of deal, they're just like pushing to Git all the time just to make sure they're just keeping momentum and dealing with the issues. Whereas like, having bug trackers that are private specifically for security tasks is can be pretty paramount depending what you're doing.
Just out of curiosity, and this is something I'm not super familiar with, so that's something they can withhold, is some of the diffs and file updates?
Well, so an example, like with OpenSSL, one of the bugs, I guess, so during the embargo period, it's spread between the vendors that need to know. So the vendors sort of all get together and decide on, like at some point there's a date set by someone that says, on, I don't know, the 5th of June, we're going to release this group of CVEs that have been assigned. They've already been assigned by MITRE or by whatever CNA. And the bugs are actively being worked on, but none of the tickets are public or anything like that. And so by the time you actually see the CVE being released, and you see the actual security advisory, that is the time when the patch is available. So you can't, like if everybody's updating as soon as possible, there should be a very, very small window between the advisory and actually being patched.
When it goes well.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Like as long as like DevOps guys are like, actually patching stuff with, a schedule. And also the other thing as well is sometimes platforms, like for example, like Kubernetes, and you'll obviously know it, touching it could be deadly, like upgrading it might be a problem. So you get the whole thing where it's like, well, do we patch? And then it's up to the security guys to sort of say, hey, this is a really important patch and it came out 5 minutes ago. We need this pushed as soon as possible. Please make sure it works, and it's that sort of DevSecOps bond.
Yeah, man. One of the things I think that a lot of people don't consider as much as we've been kind of reiterating, but a lot of the bug bounty people that are in this room that do bug bounty stuff or do any sort of recon, Git is one of the best places to look, and it always will be. You'll either not if you use keys specifically or creds, there are definitely hints towards what you need to be looking at.
Yeah, and it's often in just random contractors or interns, personal stuff too. So it's not even something that like a lot of companies necessarily have a lot of insight into or like visibility into a lot of the time, because sometimes not even in their own repositories.
Mm-hmm. No,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and let's not forget as well that like one of the biggest things that I think people forget about repos in general is that it's a clone. It's an entire clone of the history, every change it's ever made. Yeah, okay, you've removed the key now, but the key's in the Git history, and when it's cloned, like as it goes through like CI/CD chains, at some point that repository is going to live cloned like on a Jenkins build like server or Bamboo or whatever you're using, build bot. And then at some point, in some cases, you end up with like the .git directory included as an artifact because it hasn't been whitelisted or blacklisted or however the task is set up. And if that Git repository can be accessed through things like LFIs or whatever, through like XXEs and stuff like that, recovering that Git repo means recovering that history, means recovering those keys that you thought that you removed. So like really good repository hygiene, like all the way from the developer to deployment, is like really important.
Yes, it
Agreed.
is. And with that, we should take a little break here. It's halfway through the show, and we have a couple more stories we could cover. I definitely want to talk about the RKT thing, the unpatched and will not be patched CVEs. So yeah, let's take a little break and maybe take 5 minutes or so, and we'll be back shortly. So we'll have some music now, I guess.
Sweet.
Burgers.
I'm gonna restart all my browsers, so let's do that.
See ya in a second.
Close all my tabs, open them back up again.
Dude, I can't like focus on anything, so
You're
Yo.
Yo.
Hello.
Hi.
Cool. Hi everyone. All right, hold on. Let me just mute my
Join those.
Hey everybody, thanks for sticking around. Sorry to stay a little bit longer. We didn't know how the break was gonna actually go. But hello. We are back.
Join those jungle beats.
Just unplug the music and fade out. Yeah. No, I was trying to do a lot of things at once here, but it's good. So anybody, sorry. Also, this is an LTJ Pokémon mix. For anybody who had asked, it wasn't in the notes, but I can throw it in there. But yo, all right, let's just get back into the last couple of stories, I guess, that we have here, and we'll talk about Huawei too, which will be really interesting, cool. So yeah, this one here, which Ian so politely described as things that only me and you care about. It's RKT or Rocket or Wrecked. Has gotten wrecked here. There's been 3 new unpatched CVEs that are not going to be patched. And so, Ian, do you want to tell us a little bit about what this technology actually is?
RKT, which I think is supposed to be pronounced Rocket, although I've always pronounced it Wrecked, is a container runtime solution put out by Red Hat that was supposed to be an alternative to Docker, that they were putting out as like trying to, have their corner of the market. They just announced that it is not going to be a project that they're going to maintain anymore. I think that they were trying to have it be the back end of Kubernetes, and at KubeCon it was just announced that the successor to Docker is going to be CRIO instead, at which point Red Hat was like, nah, and announced that they weren't going to be maintaining RKT anymore. So now I think the Cloud Native Computing Foundation is going to be archiving it, and for our purposes, for this news segment, they're also not going to be patching the CVEs that just got put out either. So there's that.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't really know how widespread the usage of RKT Rocket is, but it is interesting to see something just get kind of abandoned like this, especially after something like this coming out. So the vulnerabilities that are in this are actually pretty funny. So somebody did a really awesome write-up, which is in our show notes here. I'll post it in the stream chat as well. But it's basically just you just use the same thing as you use like Docker run or any of the other sort of commands. Just run a command within a pod. You can just run a binary and it just runs as root from the host. So you can just get root inside the container. And yeah, the 3 CVEs that are a part of it are all related to this. And so
the abandonment of the project, sorry, just to interrupt. So is there no, because usually they have like a phase that is like this project is EOL, but if there's like a high severity, like mad critical bug, it'll get like a one-time patch kind of deal. There's like none of that.
I guess not.
It seems like they're over it. Yeah, like they're just like, no, we're just not going to.
Bam.
But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see. Like, I mean, if you are somebody who, I mean, same thing as something like, I don't know, like HD DVD or something. If you're just on the shit end of like the losing dominating or the technology that is not dominating the market and it slowly gets phased out, it just kind of screws you over. Because I mean, I think there's like 1 or 2 companies that built an entire empire on top of this technology. They're just like, well, I guess we're screwed.
It was CoreOS's product, and then Red Hat acquired CoreOS, and I think it was they were hoping CoreOS was like really trying to like hang their hat on this as being the Docker alternative. And as I understand it, the great containerization split of 2015 came down to between Docker and RKT. This was a long time ago. Red Hat got CoreOS. RKT wasn't really going anywhere. And I think they're just like, this isn't even our product. Like, screw it. Especially because CRIO is like the thing that is going to overtake that now.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So who actually uses this tech at all?
Who what?
Does anyone actually use RKT at all?
Yeah.
I think that it has been used, but I don't know how widely. Not lately.
Yeah.
I mean, like, so early versions of OpenShift, I suppose, like the public OpenShift, I suppose. Like Red Hat usually back their own products.
Well, Red Hat didn't make this product. This was a CoreOS product, and Red Hat bought CoreOS.
Yeah, interesting. It's a big mashup, and I guess IBM bought them now, so you got those execs with the hammers and whatnot.
Yeah.
The scissors, maybe.
I mean, so one of the things is it's not been heavily adopted by things like critical infrastructure, things. It's more newer technology and kind of startups more often than well-established stuff, I guess is the best way to put it.
Important to understand how patchworky the cloud native ecosystem is. You know, like there's a lot of stuff there. There's a lot of different container runtimes that, like, I'm not gonna say nobody uses them, but like, you know, there's a lot of products that are fairly niche that maybe are not widely in use. And I think that RK2 was like one of the things, if you've ever seen the like C and CF roadmap, it is just like you have to zoom way out in order to like be able to get it to fit it on a screen. It's a lot of like tiny logos full of things that people haven't heard of. You know, and you could make any number of arguments about why that's the case, but it is. So I think that was one of those sort of like logos on the map that maybe just didn't really make it onto a bigger map necessarily ultimately.
I think it's interesting. Like, it still definitely is a realm that a lot of us probably aren't so familiar with. I'm speaking purely for myself at the moment, but I can guess a lot of people probably aren't super up to speed on it, and it's worth looking into, you know?
Oh, it totally is. And there's a lot of stuff there, and then there's a lot of stuff there that like is really interesting if you are somebody who, for example, you know, is interested in being at the forefront of researching stuff that like is starting to come out, especially stuff that is maintained by people who will like let security issues sit in their GitHub for months and months and months, you know?
And then publish. Yeah. Publish.
Right. Yeah.
Ifs.
I think as well, like when you look at, for example, like hypervisors in comparison, I feel like my opinion is like the maturity of the hypervisor, like I trust it a lot more, but it doesn't like it's sort of like if you jump back in time and look at the bugs that were coming out for hypervisors, you know, for breakouts, then that's sort of what we're seeing now in container land, and it's just going to take maturity until, you know, they'll be neck and neck, and in like security wise, obviously, but I think that the orchestration factor of containers just makes it, you know, it's a whole different game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can argue with that.
Lots of moving parts.
Yeah.
Lots of moving parts.
I see a kitty in the background. We got some smart people on here, right? And one thing I haven't really understood myself, I've seen the news articles about it. Honestly, when Intel architecture, CPU architecture stuff comes out, it's kind of Greek to me. Like I know enough about it to know it's semi-serious, but Zombie Load, I think that came off while we were on break. Anybody got some?
Oh, you mean the MDS series of bugs? The new speculation stuff.
Yeah.
So Riddle.
Yeah. So is yeah, any explain it to me like I'm fives? Or is that just not possible if you're 5?
I mean, yeah.
Are you
a computer
familiar with how caching works?
A little bit.
Well, I mean, I could answer that, but it's more kind of just for everybody that's kind of listening, taking it from the ground up of assuming maybe they don't really know so much about how caching works and how speculation works.
Well, I guess one of the major things if you think about the CPU is doing stuff out of the vision. Well, it's supposed to be. It was intended to be out of the vision of your your operating system or anything that you have access to. And it's all about optimization. And unfortunately, it turns out that that's not out of the vision from a process that you could control. So that's where this whole thing falls apart, and it falls apart all the way down to hyperthreading. So when all this magic is going on in the background about guessing what instructions are happening, like what values are going to be used next and things like that, like through these like the two separate tables that are sort of being matched against your two hyperthreaded cores like end up having access to like the same stuff. And the mitigation for this isn't software based, it's disable hyperthreading. So if you think about your desktop computer and disabling hyperthreading, that mitigation isn't really going to do a great deal for you, because you probably logged in as one user and you're doing all this stuff,
Yeah.
Unless there's like some real specific attack against you, you don't really have to worry too much. But if you think about it in like a data center type scenario where you've got multiple tenants like all sharing the same hardware, and now you've got hyperthreading in the mix, just because like that's the way technology's gone since like the early 2000s. All of a sudden, these speculative problems are like popping up more and more.
Yeah. Is there good resources to kind of check out for this stuff that take it from the top?
I really dug that website that was put out by that. Let me find it. Hold on.
CPU.fail was like the catch-all website that came out this last time that had Zombie Load and the Rattle Paper and the other one that I'm spacing on right now, and Store to Leak, which wasn't put anywhere else, and they're all linked from that one.
Oh yeah, Meltdown.
That website, the MDS attacks one the DNZ just posted in the chat. I love that website with the way that it explained it, because the problem with a lot of the stuff is it's very difficult when you read the white paper to understand what they're saying, because they're talking to the audience of people who are very understanding how CPUs actually work. And so like even like being as obsessive about this kind of stuff as I am, I'm still like kind of baffled by some of this stuff. I'm like, I forget, because it's like when you look at building like logic circuits and building like an ALU, like very simply, or like in the FPGAs, it's like it makes sense, but then you get to like some specific optimization and branching up that stuff. It's like it's just so esoteric, but it's interesting to know about, and it's interesting to see how it's actually exploited in the real world, because it's interesting to see how, I guess, you can communicate from whatever standpoint with these structures within the CPU as like a normal user, which is crazy to me.
So I've linked as well the Red Hat security vulnerability thingy page on it, like that advisory. It contains a few CVEs, but if you actually click into them, like there's YouTube videos where they do like a 5-minute explanation of it, and then there is like a longer video where it's like a 15-minute explanation. Obviously,
they did a really
it's not the whole. It's not going to teach you how the internals of a CPU work, but it's going to teach you enough to understand like why these are problems and why they're difficult to solve. And you can sort of then make your own assessment of like, do I or do I not, basically disable certain CPU extensions.
Yeah.
When I fell down this rabbit hole, I read the whole 672-page like Intel branch optimization architecture manual, and that will work. I don't necessarily recommend it for bedtime reading, but it will work in terms of understanding how this stuff works.
Yeah, the Intel manual stuff is so dense. Even going through like the basic like the data sheet where like the instruction set architecture is described, it's like 5,000 pages. And then there's like supplements to that, which is what you're talking about. It's just even more stuff to actually know. It's absurd.
Big old nope.
But I mean, it's good though if you are interested in this stuff. There are people looking at this, but at the time, the same as a lot of other older experts, it's looked at primarily by academia, and so we need more eyes on this kind of stuff. I mean, I definitely want take more of a look at this kind of thing myself. I'm just like, so many things to learn.
One of the
And
weird
there's
things.
a lot of really, I'm sorry.
No, go for it.
There's a lot of really interesting prior art on this. Like the NSA put out a paper in 1995 where they first discovered covert channels in Intel CPU architecture. And it's like a super interesting paper where they're like, this is unexpected behavior for like architecture that is behaving as it's supposed to. And like there's a whole like history of stuff around this that's super interesting and mostly, as you said, didn't leave academia. And like that shit's cool. Like if you want to go down the rabbit hole, like there's a good rabbit hole to go down.
Absolutely. I loved your thread when you
95,
put it out when MDS stuff came out of all of the different relevant links to stuff, because it's hard to keep track of, especially when a lot of stuff comes out at the same time. And you're like, what does this mean? It's
especially that pile in particular. Like one of the papers didn't have a CVE attached, like a whole last paper, and just because Intel didn't put one there, and it's like, I don't know, there was more happening there than was easy to keep track of, even for people who like pay attention to that stuff and read them.
Absolutely.
I think for I guess majority of people, like this is really good stuff to know about. As in from a defense perspective, it's really good stuff to know about from an attack perspective. But until it gets put into some framework or script or something, using it practically and I'd like say a pen testing engagement is not you're probably not gonna be doing that very often, if at all.
Yeah.
I do have a former coworker who has started using Spectre on pen test engagements, and if you're listening, I'm so proud of you. Whatever it's worth, somebody out there is doing that.
Is it a successful way of getting in?
I asked him, I was like, is that practical for you? That seems very slow. And he was like, it is really slow, but it works on enterprise workstation. It works. So for whatever it's worth, there is somebody doing that in the wild now.
That's good.
So what can you do to actually monitor for those types of things? Because I've basically been operating under the impression of this is so sophisticated, unless you're being targeted by someone who actually has that level of capability, you're probably okay.
Yep. Same here.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Maybe ignorantly, but that's what I've been operating under too, for the most part.
Because I mean, I remember when Meltdown hit and the Greybeard's like, "Fuck, I'm just gonna listen to you, man. Like, I'm just the guy who's looking at your dashboard and following your instructions." Like,
yeah. I mean, I think that one of the biggest concerns about this kind of stuff is when things become practical and people don't have the ability to control on-premises hardware anymore because of everything being in the cloud. So it's like, that's the kind of stuff that freaks me out the most, is when there is some sort of practical CPU attack that, I mean, there's practical CPU attacks that can be used on Amazon servers now. I mean, and wherever your cloud server is now. There's, obviously smart people are trying to mitigate that sort of thing, but there have been ways that you can, screw with the actual hardware that underlies where your stuff is running in the cloud. But when people are migrating their entire enterprise to the cloud, they just spent millions of dollars to do that, and then suddenly they're just like, oh, there's just some random person with a literal like free tier VPS that can just exfiltrate data from like your private servers on the same blade somewhere.
yeah, I remember IBM had a vulnerability with their bare metal servers where they weren't properly reimaging them after they gave them back to when their clients were done with the instance.
Yeah.
And if you put like a rootkit or something on it, it was just completely fucked for the next customer.
Well, I mean, even still, you can DD, your cloud disk somewhere else, just back it up to a DBS or whatever, and sometimes find some interesting things that are you can carve out with Autopsy or whatever other tool.
Through VPS? I've never actually done that before. I just assumed they were pretty clean.
Yeah. There was
That's amazing.
Yeah, I've already told you this. Like,
guys, the cloud's just someone else's computer.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was one person who was, I think it might have been, it was one of those attacks that like someone explained, like either Mossack Fonseca or might have been the Phineas Fisher one. Someone like released like their methodology and whatnot. and they're talking about how like game hosting servers, like, so there's such a high rollover rate that it's one of the things that they use to be kind of immune to that sort of thing, because it's not something that's looked at as much, and the amount of rollover on there is just insane.
Wow, I'm afraid to ask. So, like other bigger services, maybe ones that are sending shuttles into space.
Yeah.
If people tried DDing on those,
I would suspect probably. I mean, I would honestly. I'm not gonna say to do it, but
I think that's fair game. If it's your instance, why not?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
well, I mean, there's a lot of different things that can like go wrong. I don't know. I wouldn't say it's definitely a good idea to fuck with stuff, but then at the same time, I'm like a huge hypocrite if I say that. I mean, yeah.
Interesting if legal.
But I mean, there's also
like,
a lot of services. So like, I would advise against messing with, like, let's just say Amazon and Microsoft Cloud stuff, like, without permission, because yeah, you own your VPS, but you're renting the hardware, but you have an agreement with them. But in the case of places like things you can find on Low End Box, like you can, like, if anybody doesn't know, Low End Network and lowendbox.com to find sketchy hosting provider, like sketchy, like some sketchy, okay, but you can contact the guy who owns the box and be like, hey, do you mind if I whatever? And as long as you're not criming out, like, then if the guy who owns the box physically says it's fine, then it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, unless there's no logs, and then in which case there's no crime.
Oh, no logs, no crime.
Also, just for educational purposes, Amazon is doing really interesting things with TPMs on their bare metal instances now. So you'll run into those if you don't mess with any of those.
Because I know Google Cloud, you can allocate TPMs. Amazon, you can allocate TPMs now as well.
On their brand new bare metal instances, yeah, you can.
Yeah, sweet.
Are those pretty expensive? I know it's.
I don't think they're terribly cheap. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have one, but yeah.
But if anybody would like to donate one,
yeah, for whatever it's worth.
Papa Bezos, if you're listening, you could bless us.
Hey, $VPN Club.
That $VPN Club
needs a TPM,
But yeah, no, I mean, I definitely, though, it's tough because there's a lot of stuff that I've been curious about, stuff that I've played with, and it's tough because a lot of the times if you come at a cloud provider with a vulnerability, like say you can like ARP spoof, or say you can break out of the container that for some reason they routed you to, or like they placed you in instead of actually giving you a properly provisioned PPS. It's tough to sometimes get that over to them because they have to kind of reconsider their entire business model when they do that. And so it's like, oh shit, you can like ARP spoof for a whole entire day.
Yo, for the record, as somebody who works for a cloud provider, if any of you can do any of that, please come talk to me.
People like you, though, are actually take that and understand that that's a good thing, rather than it's somebody being malicious and, oh, you're banned from using our services and you cannot tell anybody about this.
Right. And I think that's exactly kind of the problem and the dilemma these days is, sure, we're getting, like, Ian's giving us some good guidance on what to do if things are found on services she's tied to, but we don't know necessarily what the rest of these services are, what their policies are. And so there's been a few discussions that I've been in lately, and it comes up a lot, like just between friends. And the other day we talked about disclosure versus full disclosure and all this other stuff. Yeah, responsible disclosure is the most happiest, nicest thing you can do. But at the same time, if you're white, or if you're responsibly disclosing to an organization that could potentially be hostile, you're putting yourself in a legal situation that could potentially, for all of your goodwill, put you in a bad place. And so, it's sad, but more often than not, I just kind of default to full disclosure these days.
Yeah, and also full disclosure is not violent disclosure. Just
well, it can be.
it could be.
I mean, if your POC weaponized and you already have a Metasploit module set up, it's kind of violent.
Is that is that the delineation between violent disclosure? I wish.
Like you get the code, you print it out, and then you wrap it around your fist and you punch the.
Oh man!
Get out rootkit over here. Oh, I'm trying to find it now. We gotta go some time together here.
Did you just say you're looking for a rootkit and then you just picked up a bunch of papers that are an actual rootkit?
That I was working on, that I had like printed out on paper when I was going somewhere, but I knew that I wouldn't be able to take my computer.
Wonderful.
So,
love it. That's dedication, man.
Rootkit by hand, but literally with a pen. It's good stuff.
Throw back to the Commodore days.
Now you need to write it in with like ink and a quill and bind it.
No, I use a fountain pen. Yeah, and
deliver it over avian carrier.
Tablet. No, I mean, yeah, definitely throwbacks to when I was in, middle school writing JavaScript and shit.
Yeah, that's crazy stuff. Do we have to do a live read for $VPN Club? I mean, they're significantly funding us.
Yeah. So yeah, $VPN Club is the VPN for everybody. It's $1, I guess. They haven't really rolled out the public beta yet. There's a private beta right now, but some people are lucky enough to test. But it can.
They do
anything.
They have that antivirus solution. It's complimentary and it's a real-time scanning solution that protects you from all possible infections. It's 100% effective. John McAfee approves it. And the bug identity. Troy Hunt's approved it too. Oh, well, that might be tentative. I'm not 100% on that, but I hear
word on the street is
word on the street.
Might have gotten mixed up with, but I think it might be true.
I think it might be true too. I would, yeah. Anyway, the bug detection is par none.
The best one, I think, the best service they offer is their $VPN protection amulet, which you can create with your own wire that they give you. They give you an Ethernet cable that you can wrap around a crystal, and it protects you from any bad things happening in your life. It can, it can heal the sick. It can protect you from, getting arrested. It's kind of a catch-all for.
So you can just pray the cyber away, is what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, pray to Saint Dollar of VPN Club.
Holy shit! My CFO is gonna fucking love these people.
So yeah, I think though that we might have some $VPN Club protection amulets at DEF CON that we might be able to give away.
Oh, fun!
So watch out because you might have a chance to score one of those and be protected from crime. You'll literally, it's a visibility shield. It's everything. Yeah, it's like The Secret, except for it's an amulet, $1 a month. So
Oprah, by the way, did endorse $VPN Club as well as The Secret. So
testimonials on our site. We don't have testimonials yet, but
so speaking of sponsors, Huawei.
Oh yeah.
Sponsors $VPN Club, who sponsors us.
So
Shadow.org that does it, yeah.
So Huawei, I guess we should talk before the show ends in a short time. But so they're not going to be using the Google's Android platform anymore, which is separate from the Android open source project, which is obviously open source. Which is pretty interesting because the price of their current phones that are on the market that are not going to be affected by this seem to be dropping which is pretty funny, right?
There's so much insanity going around that company.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to begin. So I didn't even know it. So they were on Google Android platform before this.
Yeah, so it's just an Android device made by they're just standard handsets. They're pretty okay technology wise, but obviously they're made by an untrusted vendor, and sanctions are being put on them from using specifically Google's source code, but that doesn't include, like I said, the open source stuff, and as well sanctions against using, I believe, ARM and x86 technologies, which is obviously pretty important in producing a piece of hardware. So a lot of people have been speculating about it, but I think at the end of the day, what we're going to see is a similar case of where they were sanctioned to not sell equipment to Iran, and they just found a loophole.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, so,
I mean,
for example, they won't be able to ship from the factory with the Google Play Store, for example, as an simple thing. So then you think like, well, how does the supply chain for Android work? And you start looking at the retailers installing their own apps, or like wholesale to telco, and then the telco installs like their own sort of ROM anyway, like, and then all of a sudden, now it's like, okay, well, we'll sell you a bunch of wholesale phones that don't have, a very good firmware image at all, but by the way, you can build your own because you're not sanctioned. I definitely think that there's like a lot of hype over this that is just going to be so loopholed around.
Yeah, it feels like it's one of those things could be easily hand waved away by any number of things.
Yeah.
Much like an exploit with a name and a logo, a little bit overhyped.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a big deal that the US have been pushing for this. I mean, I guess Trumperino was pushing for it, to stop China from doing whatever. But at the same time, if you think about how many major electronics companies are produced in Southeast Asia, like have their hardware produced in Southeast Asia, like specifically China, like they, I think it was Bunny's blog where Bunny went ahead and decapped a bunch of like SD cards and was showing the difference between like two branded SD cards made from the same factory. One of them's legit and one of them is not, because they're performing midnight runs. So the factory closes. They've done their run for SanDisk or Kingston or whoever, and then they've gone ahead and done another run for themselves, packaged them up and sold them outside of their contract. So, I mean, if that kind of stuff is happening, with certain types of ICs, then why can't why can't that build up into the scale where they're sort of producing like knockoff CPUs or something like that? Like
Well, one thing I found interesting about this stuff is, has anybody actually shown? I'm sure there's been a few, but there's been a few backdoors that have been found in Cisco and Linksys and all over the place, right? Have there been any recent signs of backdoors or bug doors in Huawei products, or is this all just kind of?
There has been, like, for example, there's two sort of main arms that you got to look at. One of them is the consumer market devices, which is the handsets that are going out to people. So that's what they're talking about running Android. And then the other arm is the network equipment, which is where the whole selling out to Iran thing came in, and the CFO being arrested, all that kind of deal. So I'm not aware of any specific bugs in their network hardware, but also I'm not privy to that. And I think if the CIA or like Five Eyes or whoever who are saying, we know that you are you have sketchy stuff on there, they're not, there's going to be some sort of motivation for that, other than they just don't want to deal with China.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
any obligation to release those details, even if they did, right?
Yeah.
So,
but it also seems like an interesting area to explore if the allegations are true or even half true, right? Then
so
one
like
would think. What's that?
OnePlus is another Chinese phone manufacturer that is, I believe they're affiliated with Huawei. I don't know to what extent, but
Yeah.
like the OnePlus OS was phoning home and exfiltrating certain data back to China at some point. So there have been handset bugs, and whether they're intentionally phoning home or not, I mean, we see the same thing on iOS apps as well. But this is, at the OS level, like the stuff that's coming out, not the app level. So
Yeah, it's crazy that like they definitely target dissidents and like citizens or citizens that are critical of them. It's not always like about bulk data collection like the like our boys.
yeah, well, that's one of the things about the devices is that the network devices is that they were saying things at the time like, hey, we'll give you the schematic, we'll give you the sort like things to inspect to show you there's no backdoor. But just because the one that they inspect has no backdoor or has no, their schematic is clean, like that looks fine.
Why does
That
the
doesn't mean
serial
that-
number say US Jackass 01 on it? That's a weird
Yeah,
serial.
At the same time, then we had I guess it was the CIA, I think, were intercepting USPS and packages
Juniper.
that were containing Juniper and Cisco implants, all that sort of stuff. So why not China? Why not Siemens or Ericsson or any of these other countries, like European-based countries as well? I mean, it's all trust, right?
Yeah, that's the problem. But I'm sure that if there is some interesting stuff in like any of these Huawei products, that it seems like something that a lot of researchers would be getting into right now, just because of the currently high profile nature of the thing.
Yeah, I mean, there was this a guy posted on Twitter this week where he has a Huawei home CPE device with a 4G modem or something, and he's like, I'm going to disassemble this and prove there's no backdoor. I've been using it. I've never noticed any traffic. And Cyber Gibbons, who obviously does a lot of hardware work, he responded with like, well, what does pulling it apart prove? And then it was kind of the case, like, I jumped in the thread as well. Like, even if you do pull it apart, what do you expect to find? Like, there's not going to be like a little chip labeled extra modem. And even so, like, you don't need a specific emitter, like, to have transmissions from a device. Like we've seen, we've mentioned on the show before, system bus radio, where MacBook Airs were playing Mary Had a Little Lamb, not using any transmitting components at all. And like, that's on GitHub. You can check it out. As a practical example of emissions being used for exfil. So
when people actually hack I2C buses and make them actually sing and dance like that, it's always fun.
Yeah, it's super interesting, and those people are dedicated and smart. That's all I can say.
So hold on, how long until we get some chips with screen printing on it that says like backdoor?
Secret Chinese backdoor chip. Do not touch.
Yeah, secret modem.
I kind of wonder how much
Secret,
the core routers and stuff are that everybody's all up in arms about. Like, is it tens of thousands or?
I reached out to their sales team through fake account information, and they never got back to me, unfortunately.
Oh,
I believe the high end stuff, like the really high bandwidth, like core routers and stuff, 6-figure deals. You don't buy one; you buy a bunch.
I kind of wonder if there's maybe some wholesalers though that bought a bunch of gear in expectation of 5G just going without a hitch, and now they're like, oh, well, I guess this is worth nothing. And
I guess we should donate these to Dollar VPN Club.
Yes.
No, they're getting everything here.
Yeah, if you do have some core network equipment that you're trying to offload, let us know and we'll find a home for it.
Absolutely. And if you need it back, we can provide a non-binding agreement that it'll be working.
Yeah, just don't
when you get it
don't
back.
dump the firmware. Don't keep a checksum, please.
Right.
So the last thing I'll say, and we'll segue us into our saying goodbye because it's almost time to go, is look out. I guess I'm gonna soon, but Bitfi is going to come on our show soon, and we're gonna just hear what they have to say about being unhackable, and I'm very excited for it. No laughs. This is a good thing. I'm excited to hear because we're talking to engineers, and we're gonna just have a conversation about what it means. So tune in the next week, maybe the week after. We have to still schedule it, but they're gonna come on live and talk with us about.
It's going to be live. Sweet.
Yeah, it's gonna be live, and so we're just gonna hear them and talk to them. So people who have had their doubts about whether or not you can take something apart and tell if it's backdoorable, whether it's hackable, anybody
whether you
who
can
thinks
run Doom,
that things are,
whether you can side channel the pin input.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things to talk about. So we'll actually be able to answer your questions live, and we'll be able to relay them to the Bitfi staff live. So we will put out the announcement officially. I want to throw this in at the end, but we'll put in an official announcement once we can schedule. But they are on board for coming on and chatting with us about unhackable hardware. So I'm excited.
Cool. One thing I want to mention before we do the goodbyes is I do have a large amount of laptop vinyl stickers that need to go out. So hopefully we'll be announcing how you can get your hands on one of those also.
Absolutely. So yeah, thank you everybody for listening to our premiere of season 2. We are rolling out a bunch of new ways to do the actual show, making it a lot more smooth and making it a lot easier for us to do a lot of cool content. So we have a bunch of guests. You can check ThugCrowd.com for our current list of guests that are coming on over the next few months. We're slowly putting some more on there because we're recording some pre-recorded stuff as well as getting together some written segments that we're going to throw in here as well. So just keep watching. And if you want to get involved, we have our challenge, which I don't have the tweet already, but it's a challenge to get into our.
Yeah, I put it in the chat a few times.
Okay, cool. If you want to throw it in there again one more time, it'd be awesome. We have this chat challenge. If you also want to get involved without necessarily being a part of the shitposting Matrix community here, you can totally just DM us and we can work on stuff together. We have a lot of cool projects that we're rolling out that we haven't even discussed yet. So it's going to be an awesome summer, and I'm excited for season 2.
If you guys are good at CTFs, want to contribute to CTFs too, we're always looking to expand that.
Absolutely, yeah. We have a couple of cool CTFs coming out. We got the IoT CTF, which we're still working on as well, organizing. It's going to be awesome. It's going to see who can create the biggest botnet. It's going to be a contest.
Yeah.
It's going to be awesome.
It's going to be sick.
Put some limits. Yeah. Love it.
Thanks everybody for watching here. And yeah. Oh, donating Bitcoin. Yeah, we're going to also have a Bitcoin donation stuff as well. Thanks to all our patrons for even supporting us when we're even on the air. We love you guys. We're going to put out some more options to donate money as well. But yeah, we will be rolling everything out. So tune in next week and we'll see what happens. Might be Bitfi, hopefully. But
yeah.
In any case, thanks for watching, everybody. And I guess that's it. Does anybody have anything to say?
I'd just like to thank the Dollar VPN Club once more for the excellent sponsorship.
I'll just do my shut the fuck up and get a lawyer.
Shut the fuck up, get a lawyer.
Shut up. Yeah. Everyone shut up. Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.